All right, this is The Earth and Its Peoples by Richard Bulliet, Chapter 28, Section 5, The New Middle East. So a lot of the post-World War I Middle East really has to do with the fall of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans were an empire in the Middle East that, existed pretty much since significantly in the 1400s, but can really trace their origins back to like the 1200s. So we're talking about an empire in the Middle East here that's, existed 800, 700 years or so. And World War I is the ending of that empire. Some of the territories were passed off to the victorious powers. In this case, we have Great Britain and France. So the territories of Palestine and Iraq, and you can see it on the map here. Palestine's over here, Iraq is in here, everything in this kind of orangish, brownish color passed to the British. Everything in the purplish color, Syria and Lebanon, passed over to the French, right? So the French gained control of this territory. Now, they were called mandates, and the mandate system is kind of, it's what we might say like a softer imperialism. And that was in some sense due to the demands of countries like the United States, which didn't want to see the imperial world order be expanded. And so the British and the French called these mandates. They didn't call them colonies, although they served like colonies in the short term. And so we could say of the British and the French here that at least in the very short term, they expanded their influence. The difference between a mandate and a colony was that the British and the French would not have as direct a role in these territories if a mandate showed certain signs of self-governance. Again, that's why we might describe mandates as like a softer imperialism, but really at the end of the day, they were just more or less colonies. Now, at the heart of the Ottoman Empire, it was the Treaty of Cerrice, which dictated the post-Ottoman Empire post-war settlement. The Ottomans were on the losing side. Recall that the Ottomans were among the Central Powers. And a lot of what the treaty did was loss of territory. And that's what happened to the Ottoman state. It was in the center, and we'll go ahead and mark it here, in Turkey, that the successor country to the Ottoman Empire was created. And really the founder of that was Mustafa Kemal. And Mustafa Kemal had gained a reputation. He was the war hero at Gallipoli. Gallipoli was the battle in which the Ottoman Empire defeated the British. And so he had made kind of a national hero out of himself there. And while other territories were looking for specific concessions, Mustafa Kemal mobilized the Turkish population against some of the rival Greek population. There was a brief period of both fighting and migrations between Greek and Turks. Again, different nationalities, although they inhabit a lot of the same area. You can see here on the map that Greece is very, very close to the modern state of Turkey and the Ottoman Empire. And by 1923, with the assistance of the army, again, Mustafa Kemal was in the military, he established an independent republic, the Turkish Republic, or the modern state of Turkey. So at the heart of Anatolia, which is this landmass right here, Turkey becomes the successor state to the Ottoman Empire following World War I. And the goal here was to create a republic, a modern secular state that meant to abolish the Sultan. Again, recall the Sultan was the emperor of the Ottoman Empire, was to go on a policy of modernization. That meant in a lot of ways to adopt Western ideas. And amongst those ideas were new freedoms for women. So, for example, some of the things that women got in the modern state of Turkey was the right to vote. Laws removed that required wearing the veil, the sort of more traditional way of dressing in that area. and various other, civil liberties. We just say civil means civilian, liberties, again, just means, liberties and freedoms. And it was to transform this, state into kind of the antithesis of what the Ottoman state was, and that was what they called the sick man of Europe. You can get a little bit of a sense for what this modernization looked like simply just by the way that Ataturk himself, or Mustafa Kemal, I should say, the way that he dressed. So, for example, here you see him pictured right here, wearing sort of the suit and tie, very much a Western style of dress. And he ultimately took the nickname Ataturk, which means father of all Turks. Right? And so this way, Turkey could focus specifically, again, this country here in the green, could focus specifically on this territory right there. Now, in the other lands, these territories were passed to, for the most part, the British, who had heavy influence there. Faisal I, who was in charge of the Arab Revolt. Remember that the British promised the Arabs some semblance of nationalism. Faisal was put in charge of Iraq, which was tentatively independent in 1931. Iraq is the country. Where's Iraq? Right here. Again, it was somewhat independent. The British still kept, we might say, economic, benefits there. In the case of Egypt, Egypt was granted sort of a soft independence in 1922, with the exception that the British controlled the Suez Canal. So again, it's independence, but it's only independence so far as it doesn't interfere with, British interests, primarily in the area, in the case of Iraq and in the case of Egypt. In the case of Palestine, things got a little bit more violent. The British took over Palestine, but during World War I, the British had issued the Balfour Declaration, which was more or less support for a Zionist, and again, Zionist is Jewish nationalism, state in Palestine. And that created two demographics, Jews and Arabs, which throughout the 1920s were engaged in riots with one another, and would mark just the beginning of a very long and troubled history between these two nationalities in the region.